You know that moment when you're in a new place and you have no idea what you're doing and you forgot the right clothes or didn't bring the right stuff? It's disorienting, but if you can push through the confusion, it usually ends up being a good experience. This is how I was feeling in 2016. After my album release, I didn't know what to do next to really promote it, and I just felt a little bit lost, like that dream where you feel naked and exposed and you don't know what to do because you have no idea where your clothes went. Am I the only one who's had dreams like this? So I wrote Personal Throne the morning of my album release because I had this sense that there was something in the distance and I didn't know how to get it. I'd been doing all this prep work for the launch of my album, and then only a few people heard my songs, and I was trying desperately to figure out what to do next to gain momentum. I'd been reminding myself that after the launch was where the work begins. I couldn't help feeling a bit like let down though. Personal Throne became my anthem. It became my pep song. I grew up with a lot of criticism in my family, so I was not a confident person. Luckily, I didn't experience criticism around music. I was always praised in my family for my musical abilities. They seemed to come naturally. I was always very motivated. If I had YouTube back then, I'm pretty sure I would have spent all my time learning music. Unfortunately, the messaging around pursuing music was angsty. I was taught growing up that famous people are messed up, always abuse substances, and ruin their lives. Plus, I was expected to get married and have kids right after high school. Although I loved music, I was scared to pursue it because there was an underlying distrust. Part of my fear was the worry that I would become what I had been taught about famous people. The other fear was the idea of a starving musician. I'd already lived my childhood with very little money. My parents didn't earn much, although they worked hard. One of the reasons we built our own house was because my dad got the logs from the mountains. My parents were always looking for ways to save money, and that was the only way they could build a house without going into debt. And for those of you who don't know, I grew up without electricity. Going to debt even for a house was a no-no in our family. My parents planned to live off-grid so they wouldn't have to pay for rent, have monthly utility bills, and not deal with the temptation of a TV as a waste of time. Also, being off-grid meant they wouldn't have to worry about too much oversight from the government. There was fear around the government having our information. It was a general paranoia that my dad had. He was a logger and paid gas money to get the logs for the house. Everything else we used for the house was secondhand. We hooked up our water line to a neighbor who generously let us use their well, and then we lived without electricity. It was tough being a teenager without a telephone. Very isolating. My dad welded a potbelly stove and we chopped our own firewood for heating the house in the winter. I guess all this is, I'm trying to say that I didn't want to be a starving musician because I had already been in a financially low place my whole life. Music is the one place in my life that I constantly have to work hard to feel confident in. I have this underlying fear about not doing it right or not doing it well enough. It's so strange to me, especially since it's my essence. I've been singing around the house since I was little, performing since high school, and craved building my musical skills my entire life. I felt like I was behind everybody else my age because I couldn't take piano lessons or vocal lessons since we couldn't afford them. Maybe because it took money to learn and get good at music and we didn't have it, I feel like I never fit into the music world and the people in it. It was an inferiority complex for decades. It's something that I have to work at mitigating, even still. I always feel like I'm not cool enough or that I don't know enough about music theory or about all the coolest independent artists. Classic imposter syndrome. The main reason I wanted to go to college was so that I could find a job that was stable, that paid salary. I didn't have the confidence at the time to allow myself to feel out of place long enough to build the musical skills I needed. I had already felt out of place for the past 8 years, from the time that I was 10. When we moved into a trailer, dug a big hole in the ground to use the bathroom, bathed in a ditch regularly, built a house without electricity, and packed that house with stuff like a hoarder house. I was embarrassed by it. You can do off-grid stuff in an aesthetically pleasing way, but we didn't. We just lived in a big junkyard, with a lot of fear attached about the end of the world. A beautiful piece of land covered with stuff, vehicles, and a looming sense that the world was going to end in the next 2 years. It was always going to end in the next 2 years, even if 2 years had passed and it hadn't come yet. Always prepping, always trying to be ready for when it did come in the next 2 years. By the time I was in late high school, I was onto the pattern and didn't believe it anymore. You can only believe a war is coming that never comes for so long until you realize you can move on with life and just let it go and focus on building a future. I could see other people were living their lives and moving through with future goals and plans. They weren't scared of the future. I was tired of feeling scared of the future. I was envious of people who didn't seem to have that. So I let go of the beliefs my dad had around the end of the world, and I stopped buying into it. I could also see how it was crumbling the lives of some of my older siblings. One of the best ways to learn a lesson is through watching other people's mistakes and the natural consequences that follow. Pursuing music in college would yet again give me a feeling of out of place, inferiority, do your best to try to catch up with the rest of the normal people. And although I wasn't interested in conforming, I didn't want to put myself in an out of place situation on purpose where the potential of failing was very high. So instead of pursuing music, I wanted to have a stable income, and I became a teacher. As a teacher starting at $28,000 a year in 2006, I was making more money than anyone in my family, including my parents, as the youngest of 7 kids. I worked hard to break out of the dismal, settling mindset of what I grew up in. 5.5 years later, after graduating college, during my master's degree, which would give me a chance to become a school administrator and more than double my income so I could record an album in a professional studio. I wrote more songs in those 14 months of my master's degree than ever, and my confidence continued to grow as I did more in my life of what appealed to me. I ran my first several half marathons and a full marathon. I'd been writing songs since 2005 on the guitar after taking a college class. I was making my life into what I had dreamed, but now I was feeling something else. I felt a sense that there was something in the distance I couldn't reach. I was working on my master's, but I knew in my heart music was my ultimate dream. I had fulfilled my need for stability and financial security. I found someone who believed in my ability to do music and stay grounded. I finally believed in my own ability to do that. I finally trusted myself to start the journey of music outside of my bedroom walls. In the song, I say, "Excuse me, sir," and then ask if he can see my future or give me directions. And all the while, I just needed to look to myself. Not ask how it's been done before and how people think I should do it now. Instead, come out from the shadows that live inside of me and follow my direction. I always felt there was something out in the distance, and it was like almost dark outside, not literally, but like I was running out of daylight to make it happen in the way I would have wanted. So here I am, in my swimsuit, wearing ski goggles and a snow hat in the rain. Sometimes feeling disoriented or out of place, or like I showed up to the event with the wrong clothes. But I showed up. I'm exactly where I want to be, dancing in front of a camera, unafraid to be me, silly and fun and musically inclined me. And when I'm doing that, I've let go of fear, declared myself queen, and I'm living in my proverbial personal throne.
Excuse me, sir, can you see my future? I've looked left, looked right, I'll hop on the next flight, even jump out of a plane if that's what it takes. Forge the deep to get to my dreams. I know what I want, it's almost dark outside, pulling me to the twilight, just on the horizon of the horizon. It's in my bones, we're pressing Excuse me, sir, which do you prefer? I step in a direction or GPS projection. I'll be walking to make up all the talking. Forge the deep to get to my dreams. I know what I want. It's almost dark outside, pulling me into the twilight. Just on the horizon, I'll be rising. It's in my bones, my personal throne. Let go of fear. Look in the mirror. Who are you? Stand up tall, break down those walls. You are the queen. Stand up tall, break down those walls. You are the queen. I know what I want. It's almost dark outside, pulling me to the twilight. Just on the horizon, I'll be rising. It's in my bones, my personal throne. I know what I want. It's almost dark outside, pulling me to the twilight. Just on the horizon, I'll be rising. It's in my bones, my personal throne. Oh, oh.